How's it going here at Nomad Mobile Maintenance and Repair? Today we're working on a 2015 Toyota Prius. Customer has a concern the vehicle has a death rattle, is what he described it as, and I would indeed agree. It sounds pretty horrific, and it definitely sounds like it's coming from the transmission side of things, from at least the driver's seat. There's a few things that can cause that. There's a few bulletins regarding the EGR and checking that to make sure that it's operating properly, and then checking for a bad mass airflow. But I looked at this, when it was super dark out and it was hard to see anything, so we waited till it was, another day in daytime so I could actually look at stuff and not have to squint. But I pulled all the plugs and looked at those, and they were a little sticky, and it smelled kind of like some incorrect air-fuel ratio mixtures, as well as the vehicle had codes for lean, as well as engine port performance, 3101 or something like that, or 3190, whatever the code ends up being. But those two codes, and with the confirmation from those spark plugs, led me to check the fuel pressure. And one of the other issues was the other day I didn't have any tools because I was on my way back from another job, so rather than make the customer wait an extra couple of hours while I went and got tools, I tried to get to them as quickly as possible in case it was something simple. So I didn't have everything I really wanted to do a proper diagnosis at the time, but now that I was able to bring the proper tools with me, as I'm sure you can see, we have the fuel pressure gauge on there, and it reads nothing. It reads nothing after trying to force control it. It reads nothing after cycling the key. It reads nothing when manually priming the fuel pump. And we're going to go over all of that as we talk about it. But I'd say that we indeed have a fuel issue, and that's the reason why the engine's having so much trouble, and the reason why we've got a lean code is because not enough fuel's getting to the engine. Now, when we activate the fuel pump using the scan tool, we can hear the relay clicking in this relay area box. I don't know what they're going to call it on Toyota, but we can hear the relay activating, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the relay is in fact doing its job. We just know that we can hear an audible click from the relay whenever we activate that. When we checked fuel pressure, we still had nothing. So the next place that we go ends up being below this seat. There's the fuel pump access port. We removed that access port, and we checked to see that, we could activate the fuel pump, and we're listening for the fuel pump to make any kind of sound, which we didn't hear anything. So then what we ended up doing is we disconnected the connector and probed the fuel pump pins, and it's kind of easy to tell because the pins for the fuel pump are the thicker ones, but in all reality you should consult the workshop manual or a wiring diagram to verify, but just knowing which ones seem correct, I found that I had 12 volts at that connector when I activated the fuel pump on. And then I added in a light bulb to simulate a load on the circuit, and I was able to illuminate the light properly. I then connected the fuel pump and checked to see what the voltage load was across the pump when activated, and we only had about 10 volts, which isn't terribly too crazy, as well as we had 8 ohms of resistance across the motor, which is pretty reasonable. I ended up taking the fuel pump, checking and verifying on the wiring diagram just in case something was, strange. But I then used a power probe on the fuel pump to try to force it on and try and force fuel pressure, because that eliminates every possibility of a computer, every wiring from front to back, and we still got no pressure out of the fuel pump. So we can in fact say with confidence that fuel pump is bad and should be replaced. It may need some other things after that fuel pump's replaced, but I know we need to start there for sure. Thanks so much for joining. This is Nomad Mobile Maintenance. How's it going here at Nomad Mobile Maintenance and Repair? Today we're working on the Toyota Prius. We got the fuel pump out. 100% the fuel pump was no longer pumping. It refused to do a lick of things. And now that we've gotten to the fuel tank, we can see, that's pretty hazy. And if you look, where is it at? You can see there's literally, right there, there's a layer inside the tank. So usually that's going to mean that there is either water in the bottom of the tank, which is potentially what caused the tank to, the pump to freeze up, or that could be diesel, and it's really hard to say without pulling that out or draining it because, you know, unfortunately, there's a layer on top of a layer. So one of them is bad, one of them is good. I'd guess it's probably water, if I were to just guess from experience and given its haziness. But thanks so much for joining. This is Nomad. All right, so we were able to get some of that gasoline out, and if you can tell by the layer of what was below and what was above, that's not the same. I'm like 80% sure that's DEF. That's gas. That's not. And that's why we're having some trouble. Thanks so much for joining us.